Let's talk budget-friendly cameras under £300.
You don't have to spend a fortune to get a great camera. For £300, we've got 2 DSLRs and 2 mirrorless cameras, all of which are iconic models in their own way. They're either groundbreaking cameras or they were flagship professional cameras, and these were used by professionals for a long, long time, and now you can buy them for just £300.
So what do you have today, Nigel?
Well, I have the Nikon D700 from 2008, and I have the Olympus EM1, the original version from 2013.
And I have with me the original Sony A7, which came out in 2013, and the Canon EOS 5D, which came out in 2013.
That's great. So let's look at these cameras in a bit more detail. And I'm going to start with the Nikon D700. So the Nikon D700 came out in 2008, roughly the same time as the D3, which was their flagship Pro model. And it used the same 12 megapixel sensor as the D3. And it's a full frame sensor. And if you can imagine 12 megapixels is not that many. And across a full frame, it meant that the pixel sizes were relatively large. And the benefit of that was that you got fantastic low light performance and really, really good dynamic range, which at the time was unprecedented and was the best you could get. And even today, it's still pretty good. You could comfortably shoot up to ISO 12,800. It was actually only went up to 6,400 natively, but the image quality was the best you could get at that kind of ISO at the time. The camera itself is very robust, very well made, magnesium alloy body, full weather sealing. It's quite a hefty camera, designed for professional usage along with the D3, and it really feels like it too. You've got a 3-inch LCD screen on the back, you've got a 100% viewfinder, the kind of features that you would want professionally. The thing about this camera is you may look at it, you may turn your nose up at the back, there's only a 12 megapixel camera. But I use this professionally. I had pictures on the cover, I had double page spreads, and I've got a print which is about 50, 60 centimeters wide in my house, which was shot on this camera. So there's no problem with image quality. Perhaps if you're a landscape photographer and you're looking at super high detail, you might find the resolution isn't high enough. But if you're a portrait or people photographer, this is absolutely fantastic. And the low light performance, again, means you can photograph people in bars, clubs, in live gigs without a problem at all. This is a really, really great camera for that sort of photography. This is the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark I, the original EM1, which came out in 2013. And came out as the flagship of the OMD mirrorless camera range by Olympus. It was larger than the EM5, which is the first one they introduced, which is really, really small. It was a bit larger, but it was designed to be used professionally, and therefore it was fully weatherproofed, very, very well built, very solid. Even though it's small, it's extremely solid and robustly well-made camera. This was the flagship OMD mirrorless camera from Olympus, which sat above the EM5, which was their mid-range camera, which was a much, much smaller camera. But the EM1 was designed for professional usage, so it was fully weatherproofed and it had a really, really solid, well-made body. It featured a 16 megapixel live MOS sensor. It had 5-axis image stabilization. It could shoot at 10 frames per second if you lock the focus, or 6 frames per second with full AF. And it offered features like Wi-Fi. So it was a pretty advanced camera for the time. The body itself is really, really well made. It's dust, splash and freeze resistant to -10 degrees, and of course water resistant too. It's very, really robustly made camera. It has a really nice deep hand grip. It has lots of dials and buttons exactly where you want them. Dials at the front and thumb wheel at the back, which are customizable. You can set them to what you like. And there are various buttons on the front and back. It has a screen which tilts upwards and downwards. Doesn't fully articulate. It doesn't... So if you're shooting yourself, it's not great for selfie mode, for example. But it does shoot video at 1080p at 30 frames a second. Today I'm using it with the 25mm 1.8 standard lens, which is equivalent to 50mm 1.8 in full frame. And as you can see, it's a tiny, tiny lens. One of the benefits of Micro Four Thirds is not only the cameras are smaller, but the lenses are super small too. And you can fit 2 or 3 lenses, 2 or 3 prime lenses in the pockets of a jacket like this, no problem at all. And even the zooms are quite small. If you're into wildlife photography, sports photography, anything where you want to use long lenses, then you get effectively double your reach compared to full frame. So this is a great camera for that sort of photography. It has a single SD card slot. And on the other side of the camera, you've got your HDMI and USB connections. And there's also a microphone input for video. This camera does shoot 1080p video at 30 frames per second. The video isn't great on this camera, although it does have the benefit of 5-axis image stabilization. So that's the benefit.
So I've got with me two cameras, the Canon 5D Mark II and the Sony A7. Let's start with the Canon 5D Mark II. The Canon 5D Mark II was released in 2008. It was at that time a groundbreaking camera. It was one of the first DSLRs with full HD video recording, and that was really great. But does it still hold up today? Yes, it does. For under £300, you're getting a camera that has a great build. It is a solid magnesium alloy body, which is durable in really unpredictable weather conditions. You're guaranteed great image quality. You have a 21 megapixel sensor, which gives you that full frame, shallow depth of field look that your full frame cameras do give. The one downside to the 5D Mark II is obviously its autofocus. It's not as great as the mirrorless cameras we have nowadays, but it's pretty decent for portraits, landscapes. I wouldn't recommend it for fast-moving objects like sport or wildlife, but if you're doing still photography, if you're doing landscapes on your tripod, then this is a great camera to look at. Now let's take a look at the Sony A7. It came out in 2013. It was the first full-frame mirrorless cameras. We do have a whole video just talking about the A7 series from Sony, so I'll put the link up on the card so you can check that out. But talking about why this is a great camera under £300, you are getting a full-frame camera with a 24 megapixel sensor that delivers really great images at just less than £300. You're also getting a camera that's really great when you're shooting in low light environments. If there's one thing that Sony is well known for, it's great low light performance. The Sony A7 also records 1080p at up to 60 frames per second, which is great if you're looking to get into entry-level filming or content creation, and it's actually really great for YouTube videos. One thing I should mention about the Sony A7 is it uses Sony's E-mount, and that means you have access to a lot of lenses. You can use either cheaper third-party lenses or Sony native lenses as you build your gear. So great body, which gives you access to different types of lenses, which is really good if you're looking to build your kit on a budget. You can also get an adapter to attach other lenses that aren't Sony or Sigma, talking Canon, Nikon, vintage lenses. So this is a really great body, again, if you're trying to build on a budget and be able to use the things that you actually have. One thing you do have to note about the Canon 5D Mark II is that it uses CF cards. So you will need to get an adapter or a cable to be able to get your images off the camera if you're used to using SD cards. The Sony A7 does use SD cards, so that's easier. And I guess a lot more people are used to using SD cards nowadays. Something to consider when looking at the Sony A7 or the Canon 5D Mark II are the screens. The Sony A7 has a tilt screen, which is really useful when you're taking photos at a low angle, and the 5D Mark II does not. For less than £300 with the Sony A7, you are getting a full-frame mirrorless camera with an electronic viewfinder. For about the same price, if you're considering getting the 5D Mark II, do note that the Canon 5D Mark II is a DSLR and does not have an electronic viewfinder. Nigel, if you had £300, which camera would you pick?
That's a tough one. I think that I have a big affection for the D700 because I took great pictures with it, and but it is a beast of a camera. It's quite big and heavy now, and nowadays I'd probably want to go for something smaller like this. But I mean, these are my cameras, so I'd have to choose them because they're my cameras. But now, if I was choosing, I didn't have any of them. The Sony would be very tempting because it does give you entry into this amazing Sony system that's been built up over the last 10 years. Yeah. It's a huge range of lenses. It's for a full frame camera, so small and tiny. I mean, really, it's kind of the same size as the EM1, the full frame. And all the third-party lenses and things that you get with the Sony system. So the A7 might be the one.
Might be the winner.
So which one would you go for?
You would think I'd go with the Sony because I do tend to shoot with Sony. But actually, if I had £300 and I shoot a lot of portraits, I would definitely go with the Canon. I feel like this is a very solid body, and I love the images that come out of it. So I would definitely go with the 5D Mark II.
Okay. It was in a way, it's a good choice because obviously it started the whole video revolution and the whole world of video that we have in DSLR video we have now all started there. And the fact you can get really good video, and the reason why it's shot in video is because you can get great video with that.
Yeah.
So which of these 4 cameras do you like best? If you owned any of these cameras, do you still shoot with these cameras? Tell us in the comments below.
Do remember to share this video with someone, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. And we'll see you guys in the next video.